Mr. Cashman.
Just finally, Archbishop Hart, any statement Mr Hurstbark says, I'd like to see the compensation panel reopen every case of compensation and make an independent assessment of uncapped compensation. And do I take it from the evidence that you've given that that's the sort of thing that the Ryan review is going to address?
Correct.
Thank you.
Archbishop, we talked before about the diocese, and I assume that you have responsibility for many schools?
331 schools.
That's many. Do you have responsibility for the reporting regime of any problems in those schools?
That's normally handled by the Education Office.
And are they responsible to you?
They're responsible, I suppose, ultimately to me, but to do whatever within their statutory framework is required. Those things don't normally come to me at all.
Right. And in terms of a problem that emerges in such a school, be it lay or religious, would that come to your desk?
Certainly the Education Office would address, in accordance with special requirements for schools, what is laid down through the department and so on. I would certainly be informed, and if matters needed to be referred to the Independent Commissioner, if there were any matter that were within his competence, that would be referred to him.
So that the Education Office has presumably a chief executive, does it, or?
Chief Executive is Stephen Elder.
And he carries then the responsibility for ensuring the safe operation of the schools?
Correct.
And has a chain which goes to you, but you delegate effectively to him.
That's correct.
Is that the word?
That's correct.
Yes.
Your Honour. Archbishop Hart seconds my name. I act on behalf of the Fosters. Thank you. Archbishop, if I could take you please to paragraph 174 of your statement. Paragraph 174, you state as follows: I was always very conscious that the collective harm delivered upon this family by O'Donnell over a period of years was profound. What was the extent of the profundity to which you refer, Archbishop Hart?
Simply that I know that there'd been tremendous suffering as a result of the abuse by O'Donnell. I knew by 1998, for example, that it was not only Emma but also Katie, and I know that the impact upon Amy, the third girl, and the parents was very, very great, and I knew that there'd been all sorts of problems with which CareLink had sought to try and assist. I think that was the limit of my knowledge at that stage.
And in terms of that consciousness, how did that consciousness inform the way you attempted to deal with, react and assist the foster family?
I think we made available whatever CareLink made available, and they were entrusted with assessing and carrying forward whatever could be done, we continued with that right until the time where there was a mediation completed and agreed upon.
Yes. If I could take you please to paragraph 163 of your statement. And that's the paragraph that deals with the request by the Fosters for the provision of payment for accommodation costs. Do you recall that?
I do, yes.
Yes. And if I can take you please to tab 166, Archbishop Hart, and that will be provided on the screen in a few moments. And you'll recognise, Archbishop, that that's the letter from Anthony and Christine Foster dated the 2nd of April 2003 that was the basis for the request. Yes. And you'll see in paragraph 3 of that, or I beg your pardon, before we get to that, I'll commence. It's a letter, obviously the letter was directed to your then Vicar General, Monsignor Prowse, and it commences as follows. We have been advised by Mrs. Elizabeth Harding, and she had an involvement with CareLink. Is that right?
Correct, yes. She was the contact person at CareLink at that time.
Yes, and Professor Ball of CareLink to write to you with our request, as they are unable to be of assistance. As you're aware, our daughter Emma Foster was sexually assaulted by Father Kevin O'Donnell while she was a student at Sacred Heart Primary School, Oakley. Mr. Peter O'Callaghan can give you more information if you so require. Because of Emma's long history of depression, self-harm and substance abuse, we are no longer able to care for her in the family home. Recently, after spending about 2 weeks in Monash Hospital, the psychiatric unit discharged her to an aged special accommodation home in South Clayton. Emma is 21 years of age and was sharing a room with a 75-year-old woman. This accommodation was for 1 week only. That week finished the 28th of March. She spent the weekend at a friend's house and is now in emergency short-term accommodation. Now, if I can just stop you there for a moment, Archbishop Hart, that paints a very grim and disturbing picture, I suggest to you.
Yes.
Going on, Emma is trying to enter the Lighthouse program, which is housing for young homeless people, but there is a 3-month waiting period. Other programs and similar assistance accommodation also have a waiting period or are full. Emma's problems stem from the prolonged abuse she suffered as a small child at a Catholic primary school at the hands of a Catholic priest. CareLink tell us they can do nothing for Emma with respect to the provision of funding of accommodation. We are writing on Emma's behalf to see what you can do to provide somewhere for her to live. I believe the Catholic Church has a duty of care to Emma. And the last paragraph and sentiments expressed therein, I suggest to you, are completely, utterly reasonable and understandable. Do you agree with that?
Certainly, I think that the desperate nature of the situation was clearly expressed. And
in addition to that written request, there was a report provided by Nikki Maheris, who was a family therapist. Yes, and that document appears at Exhibit 16.8. I'm wondering if that could be shown, please, Your Honour. And we see from the opening paragraph there that I write in support of the enclosed letter forwarded to you by Mr. and Mrs. Foster. She goes on in about line 3, I have over 17 years' experience working in the health and welfare field, and within this time have provided counselling services to many victims where trauma, violence and sexual abuse have occurred. I've been providing counselling services to the Foster family for over 2 years. These sessions have included contact with Emma Foster. A summary of her current status is provided below, and that status is set out as follows. Emma has experienced sexual abuse perpetrated by a Catholic Church priest. This abuse occurred over a prolonged period commencing as early as age 6. Disclosure about the abuse did not occur until after Emma as a teenager became a patient of a mental health service showing symptoms of anorexia, substance abuse, self-harming and suicidality. These symptoms are present in nearly all cases of survivors of prolonged sexual abuse. Treatment of such symptoms is made more difficult if patients are not stabilised in secure and supportive accommodation. The abuse creates a lack of safety, and a lack of safety in other situations exacerbates the symptoms. Emma has not been able to maintain her accommodation within the family home because of these symptoms and their impact upon family relationships. To preserve these family relationships and ensure that Emma does not become cut off and socially isolated from vital support networks, it has been necessary for her to leave home. Her parents continue to provide emotional and practical support in a way that can be more useful to Emma from the position of living away. She then, if I can take you then please to the second last paragraph, which is in effect the paragraph in which she links together and provides her opinion, that is her professional opinion as to what should be done and the cause of the problems, and that commences as follows. The complex symptoms that Emma presents with are a direct effect of the violent abuse she was subjected to as a child. These symptoms preclude her from accessing mainstream accommodation services. Emma can function in an independent accommodation if she has appropriate social supports and a network of treating providers who are united in their responses to her behaviour. The desperation of her housing crisis cannot be illustrated more clearly than by the fact that Emma has had to be housed in an aged care facility since her discharge from hospital. Given that this housing crisis results directly from the ongoing emotional, psychological, physical, mental and social effects of abuse, responsibility for providing suitable, accessible and supportive accommodation for Emma clearly rests in your hands, as you are rightfully taking measures to Emma in providing her with other relevant services. And that was a letter, as I say, a letter in addition to the request made by the Fosters, to which you and Vicar General Prowse at the time were minded.
Yes, I think Monsignor Prowse would have brought the matter into me and we would have discussed it.
Yes. And do you recall that discussion?
Not in detail, no.
Yes. Well, if the Archbishop could be shown tab 167, please, Your Honour. This appears to be a facsimile Archbishop dated the 11th of April 2003. It appears to be from Bishop-elect Prowse to Mr Richard Leder, who I understand at that time was then the Solicitor for the Archdiocese of Melbourne.
Yes.
Yes. If I can just ask you to read, commencing, and clearly it's in relation to the Fosters, if you wouldn't mind reading, please, from the words, Dear Richard.
I've received today a letter from Christine and Anthony Foster in regard to their daughter Emma. The letter is self-explanatory. Attached to it is a letter of support, it should be, from the family therapist Nikki Maheris. I've discussed the matter with the Archbishop.
If I can just stop you there. The Archbishop obviously at that time was you. Yes. Thank you. If you could go on, please.
I have discussed the matter with the Archbishop. He's aware that we've already assisted this family in the tragedy that has unfolded. Such assistance may be said to be more than reasonable and generous given our parameters.
If I can just stop you there. What was meant by more than reasonable and generous given our parameters?
I think we would have, I think the situation would have been that there had been assistance given within the parameters of CareLink, and they were the parameters that I was discussing.
I suggest to you that the request for short-term housing crisis accommodation for 3 months was not unreasonable. Is that a proposition that you think is founded?
I didn't say so then, but I would certainly say now we could have been more generous.
I can just ask you to read on the next paragraph, please.
The Archbishop is keen to state to them that the compensation payout and counselling service that we already provided has reached its limit. The Church's response to date is the extent to which we are able to assist, meaning, of course, that that CareLink would always go on, but this was seen as something outside it.
Could you continue, please? It clearly
needs to be acknowledged that the whole situation is a tragic one and a very sad one. However, our practical response has now reached its limit.
Well, what's meant by that?
Again, our ability to react beyond those normal parameters of CareLink, you know, that there were concerns being expressed in CareLink and by others, and we were not quite sure of the situation. I think at that time, and it gives me no joy to say so, that an offer had been made to Emma in 1998. This was 2003. The offer had not been taken up, and I respect the Fosters' ability to make their own decision in that matter, but that would be part of the context, I think.
And it then concludes, I would be most grateful, Richard, if you could advise the Archbishop on the directions indicated above. You may even wish to draft him a letter if you're in agreement with such a direction. I've written to them today a very brief acknowledgement of their letter and the promise of a further letter to be forthcoming. If we could do this sooner rather than later, it would be most beneficial. Thank you for your typical generosity in assisting us in such matters. If you had your time again with the Fosters, given that request...
I certainly would have granted it.
If I can just take you, please, to tab 175, Archbishop. We now get to the litigation that you spoke about earlier in your evidence this morning, and the stark words appear strikingly upon the page, take the defences. Is that right?
That's Mr. Foster's note. Mr. Leader's note.
That's Mr. Leader's note.
That's Mr. Leader's note.
And that note accurately reflects the instruction you provided him in relation to the conduct of the litigation.
Your Honour, I think I've already provided evidence on this point. I can repeat it if Mr. Seckel wishes.
Yes. I'm content with the evidence you gave to the Commission yesterday, Archbishop Hart, and I simply like to make the following point. The sentiment expressed in those instructions is completely consistent with the letter that appeared at tab 138 that was given to the Fosters by your solicitors, Messrs. Cause, and that is that if the offer were not accepted, the litigation would be strenuously defended. And that's consistent with the sentiment that's expressed thereat, is it not?
I haven't got it in front of me.
Well, perhaps if
I've given that evidence, and that is, you know, with respect, that is my understanding of what I did,
yes,
and of what our solicitors understood they were doing.
Yes, well, it should appear now before you, Archbishop Hart, and the paragraph commencing, the compensation offered together with the services that remain available through CareLink are offered to Emma by the Archbishop in the hope that they will assist her recovery and provide a realistic alternative to litigation that will otherwise be strenuously defended. The proposition that I put to you is quite simply this, that the notation of your instruction to Mr. Leader to take the defences is completely consistent with the phrase therein expressed, to strenuously defend.
And I would refer you to Mr. Leader's evidence where he explained that that was a term that was used.
Yes, well, I'm asking you, Archbishop, for your comment today as to whether or not those propositions are consistent. And I put to you that they are.
I think I've said in my evidence, you know, that I wanted the matter settled. That was my primary objective.
That's not. Could you just answer the question, please?
No, allow the Archbishop to finish his answer, and then if there's something to follow, you can ask.
That I wanted the matter to be settled, and I wanted it to be done in the best possible way.
Yes. Well, Archbishop Hart, as was alluded to yesterday, at that time you had the choice, did you not, to either defend the litigation or resolve the litigation?
And I think, as I said yesterday, I must respect whichever path people choose. If they choose to go with the Church's path, that's one way. If they choose to go another way, well then, to go by way of litigation, we respect that choice.
And I put it to you and suggest that had you, rather than instructed Mr Leader to take the defences and defend the action, but to settle the action, the distress, anxiety and upset that befell the Foster family as a consequence of that decision would have been significantly lessened, would it not?
I certainly didn't at any time intend to cause additional distress to the Fosters because I was acutely aware of what they'd been through.
Archbishop, we didn't discuss this yesterday, but it's not unknown in litigation that before matters go very far at all, this claim is commenced, but in some jurisdictions, even before you commence proceedings, there's an obligation to attempt to mediate. Are you familiar with those sorts of practices?
Not in detail, Your Honour, but I had understood that it was always my intention, and I would have expressed that to Mr Leader, that we do whatever we can to mediate.
Well, did Mr Leader ever discuss with you that rather than launching down the litigious technical path which happened, it might have been possible to engage an experienced mediator right at the start?
Not that I recall.
No. If this should ever happen again, bear in mind that that's always a possibility.
Thank you, Your Honour.
Thank you, Your Honour.
Yes, anyone else? Mr Gray?
Bishop, as you know, my name is Gray and I appear for the...
You'll need to adjust the microphone, Mr Gray. You're hard to hear.
Archbishop, as you know, my name is Gray and I appear for the Truth, Justice and Healing Council and for the Archdiocese of Melbourne. As a matter of chronology, I think the statements of claim arrived in the latter part of 2003.
That is correct.
And then in late 2004, they were amended. There were amended statements of claim.
That's also my understanding.
In June 2005, there was a settlement conference.
Correct.
And then on the 7th of November 2005, there was a mediation and the matter was settled.
Correct.
Well, they're the only questions I wish to ask. There are a few documents which we've notified that we would suggest should be tendered, but this may be the time to do that through council assistance.
Sorry, do I understand that those questions mean that there was 2 years passed before there was a mediation?
Between the statements of claim being filed and served and the ultimate mediation which settled the matter was just over 2 years.
Yes.
Your Honour, the Archbishop was asked to provide some information yesterday, and we have received all but one part of the information that was sought, and I propose to tender the document provided by the Archbishop containing that information. What was sought and has not yet been provided is I asked the Archbishop whether he kept data in respect of those priests who he had placed on administrative leave and those priests whose faculties he had withdrawn, and that material has not yet been provided, and I would ask that that be provided.
Mr Gray, will you undertake to ensure that's done?
Yes.
Yes.
And I have nothing further for the Archbishop.
You don't want to tender anything now?
I do, but it's not necessary for the Archbishop to be present while I do that.
Thank you, Archbishop. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Your Honour.
And you're now formally excused.
Thank you.
Yesterday, when questions were being asked of Mr Moore, he was asked to provide 2 pieces of information. A breakdown per year of the costs of employing the CareLink coordinator, consulting psychiatrist and supervisor, as well as correspondence in relation to CCI concerning the indemnity in relation to O'Donnell. Now, as I understand it, neither of those things have been provided, and certainly I've not been told when that might occur.
So you're asking someone to tell you now, are you?
I am, Your Honour.
Who you're looking at?
Well, whoever is taking responsibility for Mr Moore, no one has sought leave for him to appear, but he is an employee of the Archdiocese, so whether the Archdiocese is going to do it.
I think I'd look to your right.
Yes.
Mr Gray?
Yes, I think I'd be the person to whom looks should be directed, Your Honour.
Well, what's the position?
I don't know, but I'll certainly get instructions. I did not realise there had been something left out, but if there has been, we'll attend to it.
Well, so when my friend says left out, we've received nothing in respect of Mr Moore, only in respect of Archbishop Hart.
Well, Mr Gray, we would expect you to attend to that quickly, and I'm sure the Archbishop will cooperate in ensuring that's done.
I have no doubt that's so.
Your Honour, I have a number of documents to tender, and there's a list if I can hand it up.
Do they come in separately?
They're of a different nature. Perhaps it might be just most convenient for me to go through them and so that everyone knows what they are. The first is a statement.
What I'll do, just before you start, I'll make the first one Exhibit 16-21 and then follow on 22 and so on.
Thank you, Your Honour. So the 1621 is the statement of the Honourable David Habsburger. The next exhibit, statement of Professor Richard Ball. The next statement of Bishop Leslie Tomlinson. The next statement of Edward William Excel. Can I indicate that those statements have been provided to those parties with leave? And then there are a number of documents. A letter from the Most Reverend Anthony Fisher, Bishop of Parramatta, to Your Honour, received on the 15th of August this year. A letter from Monsignor Greg Bennett, Vicar General of the Catholic Archdiocese of Melbourne, in relation to Father Gulen, received 19th of August this year. Further supplementary affidavit of Rodney Matthews, sworn 8 October 1999, and an exhibit thereto. The interview with Professor Ball and Ms Sharkey with the Fosters, 29 July 1997. A further interview on 12 March 1998. A letter from Mr O'Callaghan to the Solicitor for the Royal Commission regarding the request for further information. Now, if I just pause there, that was the matters that were referred to yesterday, and we propose to tender Mr Callaghan's response. Continuing, a letter from Mr O'Callaghan to Archbishop Hart dated 15 February 2011 and attachments. These matters all can be found on Ringtail. To the people of the Catholic Archdiocese of Melbourne, a pastoral letter dated 1 July 2010. A statement by Archbishop Hart after the announcement of the parliamentary inquiry dated April 2012. Pastoral letter on the Victorian Government inquiry into the handling of child abuse dated 21 August 2012. A memo from Helen Last to Archbishop Pell dated October 1996. And the Archdiocese of Melbourne, priests with convictions, and that's the information that was provided by Archbishop Hart, in part in response to the request made yesterday, and that will be redacted and redacted copies provided. Now, finally, in relation to these matters, Your Honour and Commissioners will recall that when Mr Curtin was giving evidence, there was a question in relation to a transcript that had aired earlier in respect to his dealings with a particular complainant. The Commission is in the process of obtaining that person's response to what Mr Curtin had said, and we will deal separately with Mr Curtin about that matter. Now, all that remains is to seek an order or a direction that written submissions be provided by those assisting the Royal Commission by the 26th of September 2014, any written submissions in reply by 24 October 2014, and an opportunity to make oral submissions if necessary on 7 November 2014.
Is everyone in agreement with those directions?
Yes, Your Honour.
Very well, I'll make those directions accordingly.
And that concludes case study number 16. Case study number 17 will commence next month in Darwin. Thank you, and thank everyone for the assistance they've given the Commission here in Melbourne. And I'll now adjourn. Thank you.